And with that, it is another brand new live edition of Talking Ball coming to you from SEC Media Days inside the College Football Hall of Fame. The second floor is where we've called home all week. And we are here once again. Today's show presented to you by Bryant Bank. When you bring your personal finances to Bryant Bank, it's so much more than a place to make financial transactions. It's joining a community bank that greets you by name, treats you like family. Their local bankers put care into action to empower your potential and work to be a collaborative partner that is helping you and your family build confidence for a bright future. That is Bryant Bank, 2 locations in Huntsville and soon to be a 3rd location in North Alabama, as their Athens branch is getting close to opening there. It is Bryant Bank, presenting sponsor of SEC Media Days for our show today. And yesterday, Alabama, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, they were among the 4. Mississippi State, they were all here. Today, you're going to get Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, and Kentucky inside the College Football Hall of Fame. And before we get on to what's coming today, recap a little bit of yesterday. Your thoughts on what we saw, what we heard. We heard Nick Saban, and we'll hear a little bit more from him today, but we heard him yesterday on the show. What did we think of the other 3 that were here?
Well, I mean, I think Clark Lee's still trying to get his culture established and just to increase the talent level. And just compete. I think they just want to continue to get better. As you know, Scott, they went 2-10 last year. They struggled a little bit.
Yeah.
And they did get a big road win at Colorado State early in the season, and then had a near miss against South Carolina, which kind of, I guess, cemented a complete rebuild for Vanderbilt in year 1, that they had a long way to go, and proved to piggyback off of who we heard from yesterday, that Shane Beamer and those guys ended up with a winning record, 7-6, and they played poorly but found a way to win.
Right.
It was one of those situations where even when you play poorly, you find a way to get an SEC victory. South Carolina did that, they're very polarizing in a good way, because Coach Beamer was very aggressive in the portal, we know they got Spencer Rattler, they got Stogner. They got Juice Wells, the wide receiver from the FCS level, who is going to try to make an impact for them. And Derrick Joyner, he's back because that was their MVP in the Duke's Mayo Bowl win over Mack Brown in North Carolina. So they're very excited in year 2 to try to take that next step. But it's a hard one, because they want to go to 8 or 9 wins in this league. And even though the East is nowhere nearly as strong as the West, it's still very, very difficult to do. So Shane Beamer, that's going to be the hardest thing to get accomplished this year, and he kind of mentioned that, is that he told his players and his coaches, like, if we want to take that next step and become a factor in the Eastern Division, it's going to take even more hard work, no question about that. And then we hear from Mike Leach, as to be expected.
Oh, wow.
No opening statement. He took questions for 30 minutes on Nick Saban's housework and on his philosophies on Netflix and a lot of different things.
It was all over the place yesterday. And Mike Leach, though, just
should be expected for that.
To put this in perspective, every coach that has come through here has, I'm going to use the word dapper. They have looked well-dressed. And this is not a knock on Mike Leach, but Mike Leach wore what could be described as a $39 pair of khaki pants here yesterday. Am I not joking? I mean, he just it was very relaxed, very casual. He even went off and once they get done with the big interviews, they do a lot of little interviews. Mm-hmm. Mike Leach doing one yesterday to the point where he can't understand why and how a tie was ever invented, because he just says nothing good comes from a tie. It's not as big as a bib. It can't really be used as anything. And so he just did not even really want to wear a tie yesterday because it serves no purpose. So that was kind of what we got from Mike Leach yesterday.
Well, and if you've been around Coach Leach, and what did I used to say when in previous SEC media days when we've been here together for this this week of I guess radio conversation and talking season, as they call it. I've always wanted him in this league, and when he is, it's never boring. So you never know what you're going to hear. He's the only coach I've ever seen come in and just say, just throw it to questions and pretty much answer anything. And so he beats to his own drum. Let's just say that. I mean, he even talked about watching Netflix during the season. Think about that. When you're grinding through an SEC season, it's so hard to get wins. He's talking about Netflix shows he needs to watch.
Here is Coach Leach talking a little bit about Netflix.
Yeah, I wish I'd watched more Netflix lately, and I haven't. Somebody said I need to watch The Terminal List, which I haven't watched it yet. I guess the Hidden Gem, which I think I said it last year, Operation Odessa, that documentary, you need to watch that, about these international criminals that try to buy a submarine for Pablo Escobar. That's worth watching. I wish I could tell you I'd watch more Netflix. I haven't watched a lot lately. And during the season, it's good to watch, to kind of get your head straight. But I'm up to date on Better Call Saul. I'm up to date on Yellowstone. I'll tell you, that's part of it. The kids got me into Stranger Things, and I'm certainly not ready for this season. I'm about halfway through. I don't know. So if you guys have any good recommendations, I could probably use them. And so I guess I'll defer to the numbers here.
Oh my!
But you know what, though, we laugh at Mike Leach because when he gets up here, he kids around a little bit, he jokes a little bit, he talks about these off-the-wall topics, but when it's all said and done, Mike Leach is a coach in the SEC. He can coach football, and as you and I are in the same opinion that he never should have gotten fired from Texas Tech to begin with. No. So, I mean, we laugh at Mike Leach and we laugh at this stuff, but he and Mississippi State, I mean, they're tied together because they are the coach. He can coach football.
Yeah, he can, absolutely. I mean, it's what I said on the show yesterday when we were kind of previewing Mississippi State and what we expect him to accomplish. But, I mean, he's won big at Texas Tech. He got him to number one in the country with Michael Crabtree. They upset the Longhorns when everybody thought the Longhorns were back and gonna still atop college football. And he went to Washington State, which – they're in the Conference of Champions that's shrinking rapidly. But anyway, it's a very difficult job because of where it's located. It's probably not quite Vanderbilt, but it's in that group of schools where it's very difficult to win consistently. He made them very, very competitive, and they won. And then he decided he took that as far as he could, and he went to Mississippi State for the challenge and the money. And so far there's been progress. He went 4-7 in year one, and then he went 7-6 last year. And again, I keep trying to say, even though I'm going to be like everybody else and probably pick them near the bottom of the Western Division, they would be in the middle of a pack in the East, in my opinion, and they're a pain in the ass to play. They just really are because of their style. He was asked about the air raid and having an off week before playing and not having an off week. And he said, it's a mixed bag sometimes. But I also asked him about, the continuity with his offense too, because, they made improvements last year. You think they're going to take another step. Will Rogers has extensive experience in the system. And as we know, Mike Leach doesn't get the five-star quarterbacks, but he knows how to evaluate them, find guys that fits his system. Same way with the wide receivers. he doesn't get these 5-star guys, but he finds the Wes Welkers, the Michael Crabtrees, guys that fit their system
Right.
really well,
And develops them.
They end up being pros, and they end up being
Yes.
really good. And he talked about how the route running has to be correct. You can't make mental errors, and so I just think he's a fascinating study in being able to take a program and elevate it and make it very, very competitive in places where it's not easy.
All right, coming up here in just a little bit, the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, Greg Sankey, will be live on our show. He's going to sit down here with Drew and I and discuss everything SEC. That is the commissioner of the conference going to join us here in just a little bit. And, of course, all of that will be presented by Bryant Bank in Huntsville at 2 locations, one downtown and one in Jones Valley. South Carolina, Shane Beamer, also here yesterday. Drew, the coach, talking about the difference between last year and this year, not having a quarterback last year and having one this year.
When I stood up here last year, I certainly didn't anticipate a month later having our graduate assistant be our starting quarterback, and I certainly didn't envision starting 4 different quarterbacks throughout the season like we did last year because of injuries. It certainly makes a difference. I think if anything, it's just the experience and the depth that we now have in that room compared to last year. Going into last season, Luke Doty was our starting quarterback, and he only had been on campus for a year. I think he started 3 games in 2020, so he didn't have a lot of experience. Now you got a guy like Spencer that's played a lot of football, has won a conference championship at Oklahoma, and then you add guys like Luke who have now are a year older as well, along with some impact freshmen and that we've brought in. It's a back room, and it's certainly we have a lot of work to do, but it certainly, as a coach, makes you feel better about the situation going into the season.
That's Shane Beamer, South Carolina head coach, talking a little bit about his quarterbacks, and we'll break some more of that down here in just a second, but let's get out to the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline. Mike is with us this morning. Good morning, Mike.
Morning,
Good.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
I read it on the air before we went off the show because by then the players had been done in the main room. But that quote that was tweeted out by Tony Sakalas of Bama Central, we did talk about that, and it sounded to me like it will be a reckoning in October. Thank you,
Thanks, Mike. Yeah,
appreciate it.
We had a chance, you and I did, to sit here and talk to Will Anderson one-on-one yesterday. And let me tell you, his hands, he is a phenomenal individual, first of all, very well-spoken, very smart individual. But good gosh almighty, his hands. I mean, he is a big, big individual. All right, I tell you what, it's 8:17. Let's get that break in because when we come back, the commissioner, Greg Sankey, going to be here with us. Plus, we'll continue to break down SEC Media Days presented by Bryant Bank.
Do what?
Put that out because the breaks are longer.
Oh, yeah, they are. Some of them's like 7 minutes, right? 7, 8 minutes. Because of the commercials and the sponsors.
It's early. Now we're in the break. If not,
But no, but you're talking about, remember, Sankey's the next hour. He's 9:20 Eastern.
oh, 9:20.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought you kept saying 8 something.
No. That's Mark McLeod, but Sankey is 9. I was talking to his handler, and I'm like you. I've been trying to talk in Eastern all week, like for guests here. I know with our listeners, we need to reference Central, but Sankey's going to be 9:20 Eastern, because that's because we were going to have to cut Pittman a little short. We're going to carry a lot of it. We're going to have to cut some of it short because, like, I probably won't even go down there. I'm going to stay up here. Because who knows? I don't think Sankey will be early because they're like on a regimented schedule.
Tactical deficiencies
I got the second or
were
third question
evident
to
from
him.
the start. Now, I want to be clear that the season was challenging on many levels, but we were not victimized by that adversity. Last fall was a necessary experience for us. It exposed the true starting point for this early start of our build as a program. The adversity of the fall broke off all the parts of us that were fake and unbelieving. For this early start, this fall was a necessary levels.
Welcome back. Talking Ball, 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Our coverage today from SEC Media Days, Day 3 here at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, brought to you and presented by Bryant Bank. They are focused on meeting your needs and those of your family. When looking for the right checking account, they offer personal banking products that are designed to help you achieve the results you desire. It is Bryant Bank, 2 locations in Huntsville and soon to be that 3rd location in Athens. So thank you to Bryant Bank for helping us be here in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. We mentioned coming up today, you do get Arkansas, so we're going to hear from Sam Pittman at 9:05, but coming up later today, Billy Napier and the Florida Gators will make their way. Billy Napier's inaugural voyage through SEC Media Days, and going to talk a little more Florida.
Yeah, we are with one of our favorite people. We connect with him each year on the SEC Media Days. I've been honored to be a part of his his show, the Blitz with Mark McLeod, and also the Gridiron Growl podcast. But Mark McLeod is now with us here on Radio Row at the College Football Hall of Fame to talk Billy Napier, year 1 in the Florida Gators. And Mark, welcome back to the show, man. How are you this morning?
Hey, doing well. Good morning, guys. Good to be on.
Yeah, I mean, what are you looking forward most about hearing from Billy Napier? I mean, it's polarizing because I've kind of shifted a little bit. I thought they had a shot when he was first hired to maybe surprise some people and be number 2 in the East, but the roster needs a lot of work. Dan Mullen didn't leave it in great shape. We all know his biggest sticking point, because we had you on many times, was recruiting, and the transfer portal's changed a lot, and he's added some pieces as Coach Napier. But again, the quarterback situation, we think Richardson's going to be a really good player. We hadn't seen it yet, but as always, though, this is the line of scrimmage on the offensive and defensive lines is probably going to tell the story.
You nailed it. I mean that's it. The whole thing, because Mullen didn't leave it in good shape, particularly when you look at the reserves. You look at the Florida reserves, and a lot of the areas on the team, both sides of the ball, you just sit there and you shake your head and go, okay, we don't know what this guy can do, and that's just the reality of Florida football. I don't think Napier did as much as he would have liked to have done in the transfer portal.
Right.
I think that's something that I don't know. I want to speak for him and say it took him by surprise, but I think that's one of the questions that he needs to be asked today. Recruiting is what it is. I mean, it's they've got to develop those relationships with the high school coaches, the assistant coaches, get in there and do some things. The collective at Florida is very conservative. It's conservative.
Work in progress.
Yes,
yeah.
And that's exactly right. They may have to make some adjustments, going forward, but we'll see. And then, of course, the standalone football facility. Once it opens up and once everything gets going, that'll help Florida as well. But right now, I think Florida fans, the optimum word is patience. That's just what it's got to be at Florida. And I think so much, like it or not, so much is on Anthony Richardson, how he performs. If he really steps up and really develops, I think that's a big plus for the Gators.
Yeah, Billy Napier's got to recruit, obviously. Yep. Are those relationships in the state of Florida, because Florida's a hotbed, we all know that. You don't have to, follow recruiting to know that Florida produces recruits. Is the relationship fractured? How long do you think Billy Napier has to repair that relationship with those coaches in the state of Florida to get those guys to come back? Is it one of those things where if Florida starts hitting the ground hard, okay, Florida's going to be able to get those recruits again?
I think so, Scott, but again, you've got so many players in the state of Florida. Look at Alabama. Alabama has done a fabulous job in Florida for many years now.
Right.
But long gone are the days when Bowden Spurrier or Bowden Meyer, were kind of reaping the cream of the crop in Florida, and then you'd have Alabama come get a few guys and some other schools. I think Dan Mullen did fracture a bit. I mean, some of the high school coaches that I've talked to through the years, we don't hear from Florida a whole lot.
Wow.
They stop by. We hear from them once, twice, 3, 4 times a year. And then other coaches you talk to say, oh, yeah, we hear from Florida, hear from them quite a bit. So it was kind of like that. It was really very bizarre because, there are going to be areas where they don't get it done, where people don't feel like they're getting enough attention. We all get that. But, but there were quite a few areas in Florida, quite a few coaches who said, we need some more attention from Florida.
And that's a total missed opportunity because Miami was in the weeds. with Manny Diaz, and then we know how much Florida State's been struggling since the end of the Dirt Neck era, where he ruined it and ran it into the ditch. So that's what I'm saying. That Florida should have ruled the state. Dan Mullen I think he's a good football coach, but he's just never been a great recruiter. He wasn't one at Mississippi State, but it wasn't glaring there because it's a totally different deal with what they want at Mississippi State and expect and what Florida expects. Florida expects championships. They want to be a contender. They want to win national titles. Now, they should have had a standalone football facility already. I think that's no question about that, Mark. But it's now at least you're progressing there. Billy Napier's getting that done. But again, like you said, recruiting is going to be what it's going to be all about with Florida going forward. Urban Meyer did a great job of that. Steve Spurrier did a good enough job, but Steve Spurrier coached people up big time too. But I think Coach Napier's a good fit. I know I've heard a couple of little hiccups deals with the recruiting, but I think it's going to work itself out. What, in your mind, should be the expectations of year one?
Year one, I've said that, look, if Florida wins 8 games, Florida fans should be happy because injuries are part of the game. We all get that. We see that. Talking about the depth chart and some of the reserves, I mean, these guys either going to have to step up and play a big role or not. And look, one of the areas where Florida's really hurting is on the interior defensive line. You know, Gervon Dexter's there. You've got 1 or 2 other guys. But like Chris McClellan's coming in a freshman. I mean, he's already been told, you're going to play. You have to play. Right. That's not a good situation. And Florida's really had their struggles recruiting in the interior defensive line. And then the offensive line has been – this should be a veteran group where they should be able to get more out of this bunch. They really shouldn't. If they don't, that's a problem. But, again, the reserves.
Yeah. We saw Anthony Richardson last year. He looked great when he was on the field, healthy. Mm-hmm. Not healthy, banged up, not the same quarterback. Dan Mullen's offense, Billy Napier's offense, I imagine are completely different. What do you expect? I mean, we had a spring game, but we don't know much about it. But do you think Florida's going to rely more on his legs, his arm? Or is it going to be 50-50, do you think? What do you think we're going to see?
I think it'll be close to 50-50. I really do. But I think, you know, again, do the tackles hold up at Florida? The offensive tackle, Richard Garage, good job on the left side. New tackle on the right side. And the reserves, I mean, they brought in a transfer from Louisiana, the 6'8" kid who's a freshman. And again, that's a position where you go the last 2 recruiting cycles, and Florida fans and media going, you guys got to recruit a couple of tackles. Yeah, and then the one guy you did get, he transfers out before he even gets in. Or, well, he decommits and leaves. There are just a lot of issues. So we're real interested, Scott, to see what's going to happen because on the running back room looks good. If the offensive line can block, that's going to help Richardson a lot. If the defense improves post Todd Grantham, then that's a good staff on that side of the ball. And that should help Florida a lot. And,
if Richardson gets hurt, is it trouble really behind him? Is the depth at quarterback an issue? If he stumbles and gets hurt like he did last year with that injury?
That's a great question because, and here's again another great unknown. Jack Miller transfers in from Ohio State, but he really Miller said by the time I got here, I mean I was still not really learning the roster before spring practice started because they started early, and I mean it was crazy. So he really didn't feel like he got the full scope of what they wanted to do, and he did not play well in the orange and blue game. Did not play well, and I think that rattled the kid. You could tell after the game he was a little bitter, but hopefully that encourages him and spurs him to say, I got a lot of work to do, and hopefully it's been done this summer.
Yeah, and I got to say, too, for as ballyhooed as he's been, he transferred from Penn State. They need more out of Shorter.
Yes.
He's got to step up for Richardson and be a dude. And then defensively, okay, I have a lot of contacts in recruiting. I'm going to do the best I can because I think Alabama should have recruited this kid harder, and I think Florida could reap the benefits. And I'm going to ask you about Princely Human Moline. That's about as good as I can do. I know he was a guy that everybody thought was going to end up at Baylor. He ended up at Florida. I thought Princely was a guy that was a late bloomer that Alabama should have tried to sign. When Florida signed him, I thought he was a steal. What have you heard about Princely? I know we just talked about the D-line being big. Is he going to be a guy counted on to produce?
Yes. And you're spot on about him. We saw him when, we only get to watch so much of practice.
Right.
But you could see from Umami Ellen, and you watched him.
Is that it?
Yeah, Umami Ellen.
Umami Ellen, okay, I got
So
it.
when you saw him, you saw those flashes. And as a young player, you saw it and you went, wow. Now it didn't all come together for him. Hopefully this is the year, another year older, bigger, faster, stronger, where it comes together. And let's face it, in a defense that Patrick Toney's going to run that should be much better and much more consistent. Florida, I think, is going to be fine at DN. It's the interior defensive line that concerns me, and thankfully the linebacker core at Florida has grown up, because linebacker's been a big issue in Gainesville outside of Ventrell Miller as well.
Is there a position that Billy Napier can sit back and breathe a little bit this year and be like, okay, I know I'm going to get good production from this unit?
Running back. I think running back is a really good group. Even though they lost DeMarcus Bowman, I still think that's a good group. If Lorenzo Lingard, who was a 5-star coming out of Orlando, went to Miami, it's never worked out for him. He's a veteran player, but by all accounts, in the spring, he really started to show up and do some really nice things. And that guy has unbelievable speed. He's got good size. So hopefully, the wide receiver core, again, depth. Who are some of the young guys that are going to step up? Because I think they have 4 guys that they feel good about, but not game breakers. They're not game breakers. That's the problem.
Not what we're used to when we saw Coach Spurrier and Coach Meyer.
Right.
And then you always had 2 or 3 guys that, you had to account for all the time, that if you miss a tackle, if you make a mental error, it's a 50 to 60, 70-yard explosive touchdown. We haven't seen that out of Florida in a while. And Dan Mullen, we saw the freak, Kyle Pitts, one of the greatest players I've ever seen in the SEC. But besides that, during his time at Florida, we really didn't see another guy that really scared you, that you felt like you had to account for. So that's one thing that I've been a little surprised with all the talent in the state of Florida. And what I'm used to growing up watching Coach Spurrier and watching the Gators is speed, athleticism, explosiveness, and really that's been lacking in this offense.
It really has. And to his credit, Jim McElwain and his staff did a good job of bringing in some young wide receivers, and Dan Mullen reaped those benefits and developed them, and they were good. Back-to-back drafts, Florida had 7 wide receivers taken.
Yeah.
That's a good core, but they haven't replaced them the way they, with dynamic players, and that's what you're saying. And for anybody that doubts what we're saying here, go ahead. Off the top of your head, name those Florida players who are going to be first or second team preseason All-SEC guys.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also Dan Mullen getting a lot of credit for reaching the SEC championship game a couple years ago, but he didn't recruit the quarterback. Jim McElwain did, Kyle Trask.
Yeah, that's right.
Coach Mack, I love him. I still think he got a raw deal at Florida, and he's going to work his way back up the coaching ladder. But, it's one of those things about timing and things of that nature. He's the one that should have got the indoor facility, in my opinion. They should have built it sooner.
I think what we've learned about Florida this year is Billy Napier could have a good season if.
Yes, that's exactly right.
If.
The defense has to come through.
There's so
Richardson
many
has to come
ifs.
through.
But think about
exactly
this, though,
right.
and we are with Mark McLeod, Gator Blitz, and as we said, Gridiron Growl podcast. Those first 2 games are tough. His first 2 games at the helm of the Gators, when you got Utah, who's Kyle Winningham, I've always said one of the most underrated coaches in the country, even though I can't stand the Conference of Champions out there. But he doesn't play normal Pac-12 football, which means he doesn't think tackling's a disease. And then you play Kentucky, who's not Kentucky anymore. They're a good program.
Yeah. Whittingham under Urban Meyer,
that's
out there.
right.
And he stayed.
That's a good point.
He stayed. So, he learned from a good guy in terms of developing football. And, we could say a whole lot about Meyer outside of that.
I have. But yeah.
And that first month is going to be interesting. You have Florida, Utah, and Kentucky, and then, of course, Tennessee down the road. So that and you're going to learn a lot about the Gators in September. But, yeah, it's I think the future is bright at Florida. But just as you've said, the facilities game, way behind. Jeremy Foley didn't do him any favors.
Jeremy did not get accomplished. Right. And, of course, later in his tenure, some of the coaching hires didn't work out. But the shocking part, and, again, we were talking about this earlier in the week, Mark, down in the main room, I've been to Florida in the last 5 years, and I was going straight down the middle of campus, and of course the athletic facilities are all together. I mean, you can see everything, and I was just shocked. I mean, I was like, for a program with the success of the Gators, they've had a lot of, and I mean, as a department, they've won in a lot of different sports, but I was walking through there, and I'm like, wow, this just doesn't look like what you would think with a program that's been so successful. Jeremy Foley, some really good coaching hires in his tenure there and some decisions, but the facilities game and getting boosters to raise money, it just really looked like it was lagging behind. And I think that's one of the reasons the Gators have struggled a little bit, and one of the reasons why Coach Mack didn't work out.
You're right. That's exactly it. Coach Mack didn't get a lot of the things that he really wanted. That he said, look, if we're going to have that program, we got to do this and this and this. And he only got a few of those things. The one thing he did get finally, the standalone football facility, which that was agreed upon before he took the job.
Right.
But even like Brad Culpepper, terrific defensive tackle for the Gators in the late 80s, early 90s. And his son was one of the top players coming out of Tampa, quarterback, several years ago. But he came on the show with us, and he said, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. He goes, I've taken my son, and we've gone around other schools. He goes, Florida's facilities, this is a shame. This should not be happening at the University of Florida. We have the we have the money, we have the recruiting base. Yeah. We're the flagship university in the state of Florida. We have 50,000 students, which means a lot of graduates each year. He said this should not be happening, and he said, I'm embarrassed. That was years ago.
Well, I just want to get your thoughts too. And Mark McLeod with us and covering Florida. Mario Cristobal has done a lot of big-time recruiting. We all know, I mean, Miami has a collective that's putting a lot of power. Mike Norvell at Florida State trying his best to get Florida State back on the map. Now Billy Napier there at Florida. How would you sum up the state of football for the state of Florida on the big-time Power 5 level right now?
I think that's a great question, Scott. I think it's competitive now. And to Drew's point earlier, Florida, when Mullen was hired, the Florida media guys were talking to each other going, this could be a home run for the Gators because look at the shape. Look at what's going on in Tallahassee. Look what's going on in Miami. They can't even win a conference title in the ACC, even a divisional title.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And now I think Norvell's done a nice job recruiting. I think he's hit the transfer portal hard to get his guys in there because it was not a good look with some of those guys under Willie Taggart. And now you get Cristobal, there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of recruiting energy. You talked about the money and the development with some folks in California and what have you.
Yes.
But can he is he an X's and O's guy on the field? Can he be that guy? And that, I think, is what everybody's looking for. So I think the future's looks awfully bright in Gainesville. I think it does. But Florida fans are going to have to be a little patient for that to happen. And there's still a lot of work to be done. Does it happen? And then in Miami, I think it's all on Cristobal and his staff. They got to get it done on game day.
Yeah, perfectly stated, no doubt about it. Well, again, Mark McLeod, host of the Gator Blitz, also host of the Gridiron Growl podcast. Man, we really appreciate it. Let everybody know how to connect with you.
Yeah, my show, 4 o'clock Eastern, Monday through Friday, 1021news.com. And it's a Blitz with Mark McLeod, and then on Twitter at McLeod Live.
Absolutely, Mark.
Thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you, man.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff
Always
there.
good to be on with you.
All right, let's get a break in real fast. When we come back, we are going to check in with Nick Saban, hear what Coach had to say in the other media portions of his interviews yesterday. All that and more from SEC Media Days, brought to you by Bryant Bank. here at SEC Media Days, presented by Bryant Bank. Bring your personal finances to Bryant Bank. They're much more than a place to make financial transactions. It's joining a community bank that greets you by name and treats you like family. It is Bryant Bank, our presenting sponsor of SEC Media Day, Day 3 here in Atlanta inside the College Football Hall of Fame. And right out of the break, we're going to head out to the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline. Mike from Opelika with us first. Good morning, Mike.
Well, Mike, I agree with you. I think that's the main point. He wants there to be some uniformity in it for it to be streamlined.
Yes.
And for, as he said, to have competitive balance where everyone's offered the same thing, and then you can make your decision instead of making it a financial situation where you're almost, trying to just outbid another school and entice a young man to come to your school out of high school due to the offer he's been given and he's not made a play, not done a thing. We know in recruiting, it's not in any exact science. Some kids, we just heard Martin McLeod talk about DeMarcus Bowman. And Scott, he was a 5-star running back. He went to Clemson. He transferred to Florida. He's already gone from both places, hasn't done a whole lot. He would have been someone that probably would have had an NIL offer, a couple, if he'd have come out. So you just never know how these guys are going to perform.
Yep.
And so that's what Nick Saban is talking about. It's a model that's not sustainable doing it that way. Now some of the schools that are doing that, like the Ruiz Hurricanes, that's probably what I'm gonna start calling them. And Texas,
you can come up with a better name than that.
And Texas ATM, and even Tennessee to a degree. The reason it's been happening is because those programs have not been relevant for 15 to 20 years. In other words,
Right.
not winning conference titles, not winning national championships.
Well, like we've said, Miami's only appeared in the ACC title game one time.
And they lost by 35.
One time.
They haven't even won a weak sauce league like the basketball ACC. So they still don't have a stadium. They still don't have a stadium. They still don't have a stadium. And so they're trying to be relevant, and the way to do that is to have a John Ruiz who's bankrolling the team right now. And trying to bring in players. And Mario Cristobal's a very aggressive recruiter. Even before NIL, he was a very aggressive recruiter. So
yes.
Again, it's one of those
things. You take
an
aggressive recruiter and you take a recruiter that has a checkbook.
And with a booster that doesn't mind, giving
Spending,
you his money.
Yes.
Then that's a marriage right now that will work. But Coach Saban wants it to be streamlined. He wants things to be, as he said, and not have so many haves and have-nots. And as he pointed out, Alabama is a have. But he wants
that
other
was one of the most
programs
interesting comments that Nick
to have a
Saban
shot.
made yesterday, was the fact that he did acknowledge that in college football there are the haves, the have-nots, and that they do slide in there in the haves.
Well, see, and what Coach Saban doesn't get enough credit for is everybody talks about him, being a hard ass and,
yes.
and talks about him, complaining and things of that nature. But most of the time when he points things out, there's a plan behind it, and he wants the game of college football to be healthy. because that's his love. That's why he's coaching college football. It's why he didn't stay in the NFL. Coaching is what he does. It's what he is. And he wants college football as a whole to be healthy. He wants there to be big games played throughout the season. He wants people to come to the games. He wants the attendance to be good. He wants the game to be healthy all the way around. He does not want there to be voids, so to speak, having to be filled. And,
right.
you know, he knows that we're in the super conference era. He'd rather be a traditionalist, I think, and have the leagues be like we've seen them growing up. But things change, things evolve. TV money is there, and so you have to deal with that. But again, he just wants college football to be healthy, and he wants to give more schools an opportunity. He's not just of course, he wants his program to win. As he said, he certainly, when someone asked him about losing to two of his former assistants, he wants them to do well until they play Alabama. But again, he just wants the game of college football to be strong.
Right. And I had a chance to visit with Roman Harper here on Monday, and he basically said, hey, look, when the NCAA came down with the Ed O'Bannon case, or when the Ed O'Bannon case came out, that is when the NCAA knew things were going to change. They could have stepped in then, had things ready to go when the Ed O'Bannon case was, I guess, declared or whatever, however you want to put it. They did not, and so this is where we are with everything, why we are where we are with everything. And the coaches are going to talk about it. They're going to keep talking about it. It's just not going to do any good because the NCAA, at the end of the day, the NCAA is just not doing a darn thing. Let's go back out to the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline. Pat from Tuscaloosa is with us. Good morning, Pat.
Morning, Pat. How you doing, Pat? Great to hear from you.
Pat from Tuscaloosa was possibly going to be there, but anyway, here is Nick Saban from yesterday talking a little bit about the defensive side of the ball.
Injured. Kyrie was injured. So those guys have had limited work from spring practice, until now. Eli Ricks is a guy that started in this league, and he has to, sort of prove that he has a good understanding of what we want him to do and how we want him to do it and why it's important to do it that way. But I do think that those three guys' development is going to be critical to, the success of our team.
Just a little bit there. A little bit of Nick Saban talking about
that was the question our own Steve Moulton asked, Coach Saban in the electronic media room. It was the one I was going to ask him in the main room is about the corner spot because remember we discussed that, Scott.
Yep.
The one question mark on the defense. And, again, I think they have the answers to that test. But, Kool-Aid McKinstry only played extensively at the end of the year, last third of the season when Jalen Armour-Davis got injured. Then Josh Jobe gets injured. Kyrie Jackson thrown in there, has to play in the college football playoff and the national championship game, and there was some up and down play there at that position. So, and then when you talk about Elijah Ricks, he's a transfer from LSU, but he missed most of the year hurt last year. And so these dudes, they need to be healthy for fall camp. But the biggest thing with Coach Saban, it's what I've always said, trust. And that's what he was meaning with Elijah Ricks, knowing how to do it, knowing the reason that you have to do it that way, playing good football from the neck up.
All right, hour two of Talking Ball is going to be a barn burner. Sam Pittman going to be live at 9:05. And then coming up in that middle of the second hour, Drew and I are going to sit down with the SEC Commissioner, Greg Sankey. That is how we are going to play hour number two of Talking Ball, presented by Bryant Bank here inside the College Football Hall of Fame. It's SEC Media Days 2022. It is hour 2 of Talking Ball, 97.7 ESPN, The Zone. Again, today's coverage presented by Bryant Bank. You can find them at bryantbank.com. When you bring your personal finances to Bryant Bank, folks, they are much more than just a place to make financial transactions. I can personally speak to the nature and the family atmosphere of Bryant Bank. They do treat you like family. That is where I trust my banking needs. And Bryant Bank, our presenting sponsor here of Talking Ball, Day 3 coverage of SEC Media Days. Now, coming up here in just a minute, Sam Pittman is set to join the show. We will hear from Sam Pittman as he makes his way to SEC Media Days. This is year number 3 for Sam Pittman at Arkansas. The Hogs head coach turned some heads last year because he has Arkansas competitive. Make no doubt about that.
They are. They're very competitive. They're very physical, which is the Sam Pittman's MO. KJ Jefferson, a dual threat QB who needs to progress as a passer. Good runner, 600 yards last year. Scott, team captain. Been more of a one-read guy under Kendall Briles, but he still has done a good job protecting the football, and leading that offense, but just needs to make that next step. He doesn't have Traylon Burks anymore, who is a freakazoid, who I still think is going to have a long NFL career. I still kind of scratch my head at him not going in the top half of the first round. But it may have been because, again, the offense that Kendall Briles and Sam Pittman have put together, which is still more run-based. Traylon, though he made big plays, he wasn't in a passing system, so to speak, because Kendall Briles and Sam Pittman are, designing an offense that best fits their personnel and Sam Pittman's style, which has always been to run the ball. Now I'm anxious to see if Jaden Hazelwood, the transfer from Oklahoma, who's a 5-star talent, and how he translates to Arkansas. Can he replace Burks as far as production goes? I think they feel like their running back room is really good. And then on the other side of the ball, you've got Barry Odom back. We know Barry Odom very well from his days at Missouri as defensive coordinator and head coach. And they've got Bumper Pullback, 125 tackles, and Drew Sanders, the transfer from Alabama, at inside backer.
All right, let's head on down to the podium. Commissioner Greg Sankey introducing Sam Pittman.
I want to acknowledge somebody who's back behind the curtain just by happenstance. I failed to do so. In the spring, we hired David Cutcliffe as what's called a special advisor to the commissioner. It is actually the title that Joe Torre has in Major League Baseball. And we spent a number of years looking for someone who could work in our office, who had been in locker rooms, traveled the roads recruiting young people, who'd actually lived the game of football. And we're really happy to bring David on board, obviously changing his direction after the fall season of 2021 created an opportunity for the Southeastern Conference and to bring him back home, if you will. And I know he's been busy visiting with folks, but I wanted to identify him, recognize David, thank him for his work already, and offer him as a point of conversation for each of you. That said, we're here for me to introduce Sam Pittman, who's entering his 3rd year as head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. Last year, the Razorbacks won 9 games. That is more than they won in the 3 previous years combined, so it shows the progress the Razorback program under Sam's leadership. That ended with a win in the Outback Bowl over Penn State, over Big Ten member Penn State in the Outback Bowl. Arkansas finished the season ranked 21st in the AP poll, 20 in the USA Today Coaches Bowl. The first time since 2011 they ended the season ranked in one of those polls. For the first time in history, the Hogs captured all 3 of the program's trophy games, so that's the Southwest Classic, winning at LSU for the Golden Boot, and then beating Missouri for the Battle Line Rivalry Trophy. Also a victory when they renewed what is a historic rivalry with the University of Texas, one we'll see more in the future. Sam has in his office a functioning jukebox. That is real and verified. And it's my privilege to introduce the head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks, Sam Pittman.
Good morning, everybody. So glad to be here. Glad to be among you all this morning. I want to thank Greg Sankey, certainly the best commissioner in football, without a doubt, most knowledgeable. I also want to thank William King. William King has done a lot for me through the SEC office, and certainly appreciate him. Hunter Yurachek, you know, I want to say a little bit about Hunter in that he's a wonderful boss, and I say it that way, but he makes you feel like you're working with him, not for him. I want to thank him for my contract. He went to work with Jimmy Sexton, and with the board of directors, it wasn't easy. It took a while. But Hunter kept working. I felt like he worked for me, for the university, to make it fair. In that contract, the SEC non-compete clause, I wanted that. I wanted to sell stability in our program, and I wanted to show the state of Arkansas my loyalty to them. And so with that non-compete, I'm going to be able to coach throughout my career, hopefully as long as we win, obviously, at the University of Arkansas. We brought KJ Jefferson today, Bumper Pool and Jalen Catalon. Told the team yesterday, if it's up to me, you know what I'm going to say, I had to bring the whole damn team. However, we're allowed to bring 3, and we're represented well. With KJ Jefferson, he was our leading rusher, leading passer, was the MVP of the Outback Bowl, and he's a returning captain from last season. He's our quarterback. He makes us go. He sets the tone for our football team. Bumper Pool is what I would call a super senior, coming back COVID senior year, had 125 tackles at his linebacker position. Great leader, great kid. I believe if he stays healthy, I believe he'll be the all-time leading tackler in the history of the University of Arkansas. Jalen Catalon we brought along as well. He was a captain last year for us, as we all know. He was hurt halfway through the season, went ahead and had some surgery on his shoulder. He's the leader of the secondary. He gets everybody in alignment. He can run downhill. He'll hit you. Great kid. I'm excited for you all to meet those 3 kids. Like I said before, they're going to represent the University of Arkansas in a fine, fine manner. Just a quick recap. Commissioner Sankey said some of it. Our university continues to graduate student athletes. Chris Evans, Felicia Sane, their crew, and academics, we've graduated 100% of our football athletes who have exhausted their senior year of eligibility ever since I've been there. Most wins by the program since 2011, finished ranked in the top 20 in the coaches poll, won 4 trophies. That was a big deal to our football team, big deal, to have all 3 of our rivalry trophies and certainly the Outback Bowl trophy. No one on our team had ever had one of those trophies, and we were fortunate to have all 3 of them. We led the Power 5 in rushing. I think what that does, that tells us what we're trying to do with our program. We want to be a physical team. We want both sides of the line of scrimmage. We want to win the line of scrimmage, and we want to be physical and tough. And to do that is hard to do. I was an O-line coach for a long, long time and never was able to lead the Power 5 in rushing, but we were able to do that last year. April 22nd, we handed out bowl rings. Some people ask, well, why do you hand out a bowl ring for Outback Bowl? Because I wanted to. And because it's something that nobody on our team had accomplished. And, you know, you can set goals, and once you reach one, that ain't the goal, that's one of them. And once you reach that goal, we're going to celebrate it, and then we're going to move on. That was the last time our team talked about last year. Proud of our coaching staff. We have 2 new coaches in Deke Adams, who's our D-line coach, and Dominique Bowman, who came over from Marshall. And both of those guys are recruiters, and both of them are loyal, and both of them are great men. And our team has received them well. They were both in for spring ball, and both of them are recruiting at a high level. We kept our three coordinators in Kendall Briles, Scott Fountain, and Barry Odom. They're all loyal. They're great coaches. They're all better men. We are one of 8 Power 5 teams to have a pair of coordinators returning for the 3rd consecutive season. Portal's been in for a long time, and coaches. Administration stepped up and helped us keep Cody Kennedy when others came calling. Jamil Walker, our strength coach, has done an outstanding job with our kids. They work. You know, the purest form of team, go in there and watch your team work out in the weight room. There's no offensive line versus defensive line. There's no linebackers versus running backs. There's none of that stuff. It's a team. It's pure. It's fun to watch. I enjoyed watching that this summer. Jamil Walker and his staff do a great job. Challenging schedule, again. I think this is the 3rd year in a row. Well, I've only been here 3 years, so I know it's the 3rd year in a row that we've been awarded the toughest schedule in college football. All 12 of this year's opponents made postseason play last year. Our crossover games are with South Carolina and Missouri. South Carolina, obviously, Coach Beamer has done a great job there. A lot of enthusiasm. He's one of, I don't know what tree he's out of, as far as is he with Kirby or Oklahoma or whatever it be. But there was myself and Coach Tucker and Dan Lanning and Coach Beamer all came from the Kirby Smart tree at some point. And I'm certainly indebted to him, but Beamer's done a great job there. South Carolina comes in week 2. They got a lot of great things going in their program. Missouri, obviously, is our other crossover game, which we're trying to make a rival. We haven't won the game enough times to make it a rivalry game, but we're trying to do that. Excited about our non-conference opponents this year. Week 1, we play University of Cincinnati. Luke Fickle's the head coach there. They went to college football playoffs, AAC conference champions, and he was AFCA Coach of the Year. We're excited about that game. Week 3, we play Missouri State. Bobby Petrino, Arkansas coach, had great success at the University of Arkansas, has been in the FCS playoffs the last 2 seasons. BYU, they're 21-4. They have 2 top 20 finishes over the last 2 years, 20 returning starters. We go to BYU. And then Liberty, they have 3 straight bowl wins under Coach Freeze. We all know about Coach Freeze. We have 12 starters returning, 6 on offense, 4 on defense, 2 special teams with Cam Little and Reed Bauer on the special teams. We have 3 super seniors returning, Dalton Wagner, Bumper Pool, and Dorian Gerald. Portal additions, we had 9. We ended up with 2 wide receivers, 4.
All right, that was Arkansas head coach Sam Pittman there, kind of helping us preview the Arkansas Razorbacks. But we are joined now here at the table. We are live still from SEC Media Days presented by Bryant Bank for our Day 3 coverage. But I guess you could say royalty. I'm going to say royalty at the table. The commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, Greg Sankey, joining us now here at the College Football Hall of Fame.
And Commissioner Sankey, at first I want to say thank you for joining us here on 97.7 The Zone in Huntsville, Alabama. But also, I want to congratulate you on your opening statements for each of these coaches. You've done a lot of research, a lot of tidbits that help us find out things about these guys' personalities that maybe we didn't already know. But enjoyed hearing your intro to Coach Pittman before we had him on the show today.
Our staff receives credit for that work.
And
Some of it I know.
And Commissioner, I want to say, too, I completely agree about the new role for David Cutcliffe. We're very excited about that. We've had him on our evening show already. Really excited to see what he can bring to this conference. A man of integrity, a man with a long career in coaching that I think will be an asset to the SEC.
Well, we're really appreciative that circumstances played out in our favor, and we had been on the trail looking for somebody like him for a while, and it was an easy opportunity when he was available. So he's done good work already.
You opened up SEC Media Days, as you do each and every year, on Monday. The message this year, I'm sure, when you were thinking about what you wanted to convey and what you wanted to talk about. Was it a little difficult this year to come up with a message?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. It was. I usually begin the preparation back in early June, right after our spring meetings, trying to think through the key issues. And then, in late June, early July, things changed. The issues around conference membership moves, which then have ripple effects into another college football playoff discussion, super leagues, are we all going to leave the NCAA? And so how do you think through communicating on those points became much more important. And really, this particular set of marks didn't crystallize until Saturday, really.
Wow.
And that's not abnormal. Usually I write about 30,000 words, and I can only use about 3. This time, just getting to 3 was a bit of a challenge. And then to try to wordsmith a bit so you communicate effectively is the last-minute challenge so that you can communicate effectively.
Right.
Well, and Commissioner, we know, as you said in your message, the SEC is going to be calculated with with their next move, with conference expansion happening again. But you made national headlines last year. It's funny we sit here in front of the OU and Texas logo. That was the real big story of SEC Media Days that happened on the final day. We're all looking forward to them joining the conference, but that piggybacks to the next question. In your mind, when do you think we will know what kind of scheduling model we're going to use? Personally, I'm in favor of the 9 and the 3 with the 3 permanent opponents and the 6 rotating, because I want to see everybody play, each other within a 5-year period. But talk about where we stand with that.
We are focused primarily on a single division model, which is either 8 or 9 games. It allows us to rotate teams through home and away with everybody within 4 years. Right now we're at 12 years. So the structure or the thought would be if somebody completes their eligibility, they would have played everybody multiple times and will have played in every venue at least once. Now, whether that's 8 or 9 games remains to be seen. The point of differential generally is 1 permanent opponent in an 8-game schedule. So you've got 1 rival played every other year. The other has 3 permanent opponents, which protects 3 annual games, and then the other 6 would rotate through every other year. We've been asked to evaluate implication on CFP access, whether we're at 8 or 9 games, bowl eligibility at 8 or 9 games, to look at the tie-breaking situation. So we've had over a quarter century with divisions where you always have head-to-head matchups. When you go to a single division, you will have times where you'll have to decide ties on something other than direct competition. And is that, the simple one is point differential, but then you run up scores. Is it common opponents to the extent they exist, which could be imbalanced? So we're digging through that. And then wanting to answer just the general questions of what's happening around us. So when we stopped in Destin, it was with the understanding we'd have a little bit more time to see kind of what the Big Ten does with its TV contract, what initial CFP conversations are. And lo and behold, we've got even more issues on the table because of conference membership movement.
I think that's the thing. People think, it's simple. You're going to have 16 teams. Let's just put 8 and 8, and we'll just do divisions, and we'll just keep it that way. But it's not as simple for you guys as far as making a schedule, a future schedule, and all this other stuff. There are a wide array of different things that go into consideration when deciding whether or not to have divisions or keep a league, keep it one big thing. It's not as simple as.
Yeah, and I'll touch on a few of those. So one is the transition from our current model for scheduling to the next model. You want to minimize repeat games at the same site. We had some of that in 11, 12, 13. Okay. I still receive emails from certain fan bases. So if you can, if you played Team A and Team B played at Team A's site in the last year of the current model, they go to Team B's site the next time they play. That's the natural. So if we can manage that, it's healthy. A lot of conversation about 14 pods. But what you learned with 14 pods is you tried to balance things over time. You would have Team A and B play at Team A's site and then go B, and then A, and then back to B. So 3 out of 4 times they played would be, and it would balance out over 8 years. But I think the fans don't accept that as reasonable. We also looked at historic success levels and, if you will, a balanced schedule. So when we talk to ADs individually, having fairness inherent and balance. And so fairness became about the ability to see everybody over time on a more equitable basis. Balance became about competitive balance. And the West has been highly successful. So if you're playing Alabama every year, you're playing a high-win team. And, we can't schedule Alabama against Alabama. And so there are variances in the current model, and we can narrow the differential between competitive success over time by moving to a single division model. In other words, there's wide variances in the strength of our schedules right now. We can narrow that so it's more equitable with this different model. And we're still looking at some of the ways to examine metrics there. It's a little bit complex to examine over the radio, but that's illustration of the question, which is there's a lot more to it than, hey, just play pods. That's great. That'd be cool. 14 pods, moving around. And we looked at that in depth. It just creates some imbalance, and it doesn't minimize the inequity and the strength of schedules that the single division approach can do.
And Commissioner, I know you addressed it in your opening statement as well in your State of the League address, but I know you met with the coaches in Destin. It's about a year in now. It's become a huge topic in college football, but how quickly do you think you working with each individual state in our conference, can we see some regulation for NIL?
There is regulation now. It just differs. And our view
to get it on the
back
in
2019 was doing this state by state was the wrong approach, but that's what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no easy button for the NCAA to push and adopt a rule, because the NCAA can't be more restrictive than states and put universities in conflict with their own states. That's an untenable position. So we start with an ask of our congressional members, our House members, and our Senate members, will you engage to help us solve the problem so we can have a national standard and support healthy competition and protect student athletes? If there's no action there, then we're back to states, which means it won't be a quick solution, to see if we can normalize state legislation, at least within our footprint. And the challenge would be, could we do something nationally? So we'd start focusing within our 11-state, soon-to-be 12-state footprint, to see if we could have commonalities. But Congress really provides the venue for a national standard.
Did you ever imagine the term or the name, image, and likeness becoming such a household term, and people and fans of college football using it so much, and coaches using it so much? And, I mean, just the landscape that developed in a year around the name, image, and likeness.
We knew it was coming. In 2019, we provided some perspectives and feedback as the NCAA was working through issues. And I actually think those perspectives and principles hold up well today.
Yeah.
Now, they ultimately weren't accepted fully. And I think it illustrates some of the error present in the approach and why we're in the circumstance we're in. Fundamentally, there are any number of good stories around name, image, and likeness. Kearis Jackson, who plays wide receiver at Georgia, talked about a Bojangles deal where he had to make biscuits on social media. That's what you expected.
Right,
we have a student athlete playing softball who has a name, image, and likeness arrangement with a hometown Chevy dealer, and there's actual activity taking place there. South Carolina, through Under Armour, had jersey replicas printed with their players' names on it. That created some income. That's what we expected.
Yes.
It is this insertion of collectives into recruiting with guarantees that don't seem to have the kind of business activity that's actual name, image, and likeness, which is the highest point of concern. In fact, our coaches said they want us to work with entities, the NCAA, state, federal government, to move boosters further out of recruiting activity. And so we saw name, image, and likeness coming. We didn't want it to manifest itself. We didn't want it to manifest itself this way. I think it makes me look forward to the season so we can talk about football more than name, image, and likeness.
And Commissioner, I wanted to ask you something that I haven't heard broached, and it's something that's gone through my head. Your predecessor, Mike Slive, one of the first things he did in making this league what it is today is he wanted to have every school in the SEC be done with NCAA issues, and we don't ever want to see that happen to our conference. But inevitably, something usually happens. When we've had a couple unfortunate things happen with coaches that are no longer in our league, philosophically for you, when we have a coach, either an assistant coach or a head coach named in an investigation, they always get other opportunities to come back into the profession. When you decide, how do you decide? I guess my question is to let them back into our league. Is it a situation where you want the investigation to be done and everything to come to pass and the probation to be dealt with, and then let the guy back in? How do you do that with a coach that's named in an investigation that maybe cast a shadow on the SEC?
Despite what's written, I don't control hiring decisions. We have a bylaw that requires our institutions, our athletic departments, check with us to determine, is there hiring an assistant coach or a head coach, is there any track record, any current issues? And this is more specific to your question. So we're very clear in communicating that information. If there is a past finding in a major infractions case related to an individual, particularly around unethical conduct, or if there's an active issue, we make people aware. If they choose to move forward, it ends up with myself, the president, the athletics director having a conversation before any offer is made to say, here's the reality, and you have a responsibility to develop an oversight plan to make sure this doesn't happen again. Now, we also expect our schools to act with integrity. And there may be circumstances that are well in someone's past. So I can think of a head coach in our league who over 2 decades ago ran afoul of the NCAA and hasn't had any problems since. That's going to look different than an active case in the eyes of one of our members. What we fundamentally need at the national level, at the NCAA level, is to move these things to conclusion rapidly. So in September 27, the FBI acted to arrest a number of assistant coaches. Those cases still linger. We're coming up on really 5+ years since the act occurred. So we've got kids playing now who are junior high school members dealing with uncertainty or wondering about penalties in their program. And they were in junior high when the misdeeds were alleged to have taken place. So part of my role nationally has been to say to the NCAA, you have a responsibility to bring these matters to conclusion. And there are reasons it slows down. Coaches bear some of that responsibility. But we've got to push through to conclusion so that people have clarity when they're trying to make hiring decisions. We had a circumstance this year, coach was hired at another school outside our league, but we had a couple schools looking at a coach, and it was unfair that for 5 years, this thing's just been in orbit. There's not been a conclusion to the case involving that coach. We don't have any clarity on what did or didn't happen, and that's why the timeliness is so important, so our process can provide full and complete information based on timely outcomes.
The conference itself, another great year, 2021, another great year. Georgia football national champions, Ole Miss baseball, Florida track and field. I mean, the conference itself is still one of the premier, if not the premier. Great year for the SEC.
It has been, and you add in there the South Carolina women's basketball national championship. We had, national runners-up in a number of sports. I was at gymnastics. Oklahoma won, Florida was second, went right down to the very end. We had 2 of the Final 4 in women's golf. We had teams in the Final Fours and national finalists in men's and women's tennis. The success goes on, and it's a tribute to great leadership on campuses. We obviously are a part of setting a tone, setting a stage. We want our championships to be stepping stones to national championships, both the level of competition, but the way we provide support. And what's really fun is winning the College World Series, because you get the trophy. We've had it now for 4 years, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and then you don't lose a game for like 60 days because you don't have anything going on. So you get to just enjoy the moment a little bit longer.
Well, and as we're wrapping it up with you, Commissioner, I will say it's on my bucket list to go to Omaha. You've been able to go. It's almost like you're going back to Hoover. At least it was this year.
It was. We had like the 4+2. So there are 8 teams in Omaha, 4 current members and 2 future members, and then Stanford and Notre Dame. And it was fun. A lot of neutral colors being worn by me, and then really great competition. You look at the Arkansas Ole Miss games, the final 2 games when you're supposed to be depleted in pitching, and just really well played. And then just happy, Mike Bianco, somebody I've known for a long time.
Very happy for him.
He was at Northwestern State as an assistant. I worked on campus back in 1990. So to see, just barely in to pulling it all together and winning the national championship was a fun ride.
Well,
All right,
Commissioner, we really
SEC
appreciate your time today.
Yeah, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
time.
Thank you.
Forward.
Great conversation there with
Well,
the
you know,
SEC
schedules are
Commissioner.
scheduled out so
And
many years
Sam
in
Pittman is
advance,
still
and
going, but
nobody
I tell
knew.
you what, we need to get a break in when we come back. We'll eavesdrop more on Sam Pittman if he's still hanging around. Hall of Fame. Of course, today's coverage presented by Bryant Bank. Bring your finances to Bryant Bank. They are much more, folks. I'm telling you, they are much more than just a financial institution. They are a community bank that greets you by name. They treat you like family. You can find them at bryantbank.com. It is Bryant Bank. Don't forget, they do have that digital banking experience. They make it easy for you. They have been listed as a best small bank in Alabama. Newsweek has recognized Bryant Bank as one of the best small banks in the state of Alabama. So make sure you head to Bryant Bank. They are today's presenting sponsor of Talking Ball from SEC Media Days. They got 2 locations in Huntsville, 1 in Jones Valley, 1 in downtown. And they also have that branch getting ready to open in Athens. So there'll be 3 great locations in North Alabama. So far today, we have heard Sam Pittman, and what a fantastic conversation we just had with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey.
Yeah, it was a great one from Greg Sankey, and we had a chance to sit down with the commissioner for about 15 minutes, some very poignant answers and some clarity on the situations with the SEC, with the scheduling format coming up with OU and Texas going to join the league in 2025 right now at this moment. Also, he
made it clear that they're going away from divisions. I mean, he made that very clear.
And it's either going to be the 1-7 model, as they call it, or if it's 8 games, or if it's 9, I still think it's 3 and 6 with the 3 permanent opponents. I'm excited I'd love it to be that. I think more SEC games creates more interest. It's better competition. And then within a 4-year period, you get a chance to play in every venue. And I really just think, and keep some of those traditional rivalries like Alabama-Auburn, Alabama-Tennessee. Probably the third one for Alabama right now would be Alabama-Mississippi State, and then you play LSU, every other year or so. And so I think that might be healthy for that rivalry right now, because there's been a lot of great games between Alabama and LSU since Nick Saban came to Tuscaloosa, but at the same time, I think in many ways he's gotten inside their heads, and they would give them some time to rekindle rivalries potentially with Texas and Oklahoma. And both of them, as the 2 new members of this league, are probably going to find it a little bit tougher than the Charmin soft Big 12.
Greg Sankey also, we had a chance to talk to him about name, image, and likeness. And basically, he pointed out some of the good stories around the conference from athletes around some of the schools. And let me tell you, Greg Sankey's paying attention to all of this. And he did kind of hint of the fact that what is not good and what they got to get away from is exactly what Texas A&M has been doing.
Yeah, he didn't bring up Dirt Neck, neither did I, but we all know who he was talking about. And that is, of course, Fisher, who, I could have asked, Commissioner Sankey if we could get a presenting sponsor of a lie detector company to hook up to Jimbo and see how many lies he did tell tomorrow, but I didn't go there. I mean, I could have. But I do think at some point in time, the one question I did ask that I wanted clarity to, and he gave some interesting background, is with coaches that are in NCAA investigations and when they're let back in the league, because I think eventually Dirt Neck will probably be paid off to leave. But
he said that he doesn't control that, though.
Yeah, he doesn't, but I do think he's advised of it.
Yes.
And is aware of it. And I was bringing it up because of situations with Bo Davis, who was dismissed from Alabama in an investigation, did a year, at Texas, San Antonio, and at a school where he was hooked up with Pete Golding, and ended up, also then going to the NFL for 3 years with the Detroit Lions. Now, ironically, if he stays there, he's in his second tenure at Texas with Steve Sarkisian. He would be back in the SEC in a couple years in 2025. But many people have thought he might be back at Alabama with Nick Saban. But was he going to be able to be return to the conference?
Bo Davis.
Because he could potentially be the next coach at Auburn. You heard Jake Crane mention that on our show on Monday. So Is he going to be allowed back in the conference? So that's going to be – and Jeremy Pruitt.
Yeah, Jeremy Pruitt, yep.
The defensive coordinator this year at Plainview High School. So he's out of coaching right now on the college and the pro level, but we know that he wants back in the profession, Scott. Are they going to wait until this is resolved at Tennessee with him before they allow him potentially back in this league? Because that's where his ties are. Yes, he coached in the ACC at Florida State, helped Dirt Neck, make $96 million, which he deserves about $30 million of because they wouldn't have won it without him. But again, his history is in the SEC with Alabama, with Georgia, with Tennessee. So he's going to be a wanted guy out there because he's an elite defensive coordinator, Scott, who's one of the best recruiters in the country.
All right, well, we've heard some Sam Pittman. Now, coming up at 9:30, don't forget, Talking Ball. We are going the extra mile here for you all week long. The Tom Abraham Show, Talking Ball. We're going an hour and a half. We're going 90 minutes each day. And we will hear from Kirby Smart coming up at 9:30 this morning. Kirby Smart, the next coach to be introduced here inside the College Football Hall of Fame. So make sure you stay with 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Download the app today so you'll be able to hear the entire Kirby Smart press conference. That'll lead into the Tom Abraham Show coming up later this morning. Sam Pittman has already hit the gates and running. So Sam Pittman making his way around the rounds today. And here is the list. Jalen Cantalone from Arkansas,
Maybe the
KJ
best safety
Jefferson
in the league,
and Bumper Poole are the athletes here for Arkansas. Stetson Bennett, Nolan Smith, and Cedric Van Pran here for Georgia. And I'll just say this in regards to Stetson Bennett.
Yep.
Last year, JT Daniels made the rounds here at SEC Media Days. We all know what happened with JT Daniels. We did not get to visit with him because he said he was too frazzled and too rattled from doing interviews. Stetson Bennett will not have that happen to him today.
We should have known as soon as that day, and I'll never forget the czar, Tom Abraham. It happened when he was getting his show cranked up.
Yes.
And he wanted to talk to Overrated, and he was making the rounds, during on Radio Row in Hoover, and then all of a sudden he and his handler just leave, and we're all looking at each other, and then they let the word leak out that the SID with him said, yeah, he's a little rattled. We're
cutting it short, like 25 minutes short.
Yeah, we're leaving, and I'm sitting here going, this guy's supposed to be a Heisman candidate and a leader of men, and he's rattled at SEC Media Days in Hoover. And it's like the czar said, if he's rattled dealing with media, what in the hell is he going to do when he's under pressure from Will Anderson and, guys in the SEC?
Yes.
And in other words, he was
Charmin soft.
He was hurt in the game against Clemson and didn't play that well. And then we saw what Stetson Bennett did.
Yes.
He won the football team over like a Jake Coker. He got in there, produced, led them to a national championship, and now for the rest of his life will never have to buy a meal or a beer or a beverage or anything in the state of Georgia. And eventually it's going to be the Ballou and Bennett show on radio if he wants it to be. They're going to make a ton of money because if you put those two together, the two dudes that won in the salad days of the SEC, and what I mean by 80s is when the SEC was coming to power and becoming the toughest league in America. Herschel Walker, one of the legends in this sport of college football, not just the Southeastern Conference, led them to the top of the heap in the SEC, and then eventually as a national champion in 1980.
Yeah.
Then you got Stetson Bennett in the modern era leading them to the top of the heap. That is the two, icons in Georgia football, besides Herschel in the middle, the two guys who gets the credit a lot of times, the quarterback. So again, Stetson Bennett has been one of the remarkable stories because he's a walk-on, a guy that grew up wanting to be a dog.
Yep.
He walks on, then he transfers to a junior college, comes back, he earns a scholarship, and then he's able to unseat the West Virginia Mountaineer quarterback now, at least for the first game or two. We'll see if he can handle the pressure in the Big 12 from Vanderbilt. I'm sorry, but it might as well be Vanderbilt. But anyway, West Virginia.
Yep.
So and again, JT Daniels has been one of the more overrated players I've ever seen in my life, who left USC, got hurt, lost his job to now the starting quarterback at Pitt of all places, Keenan Slovis. But I think he can spin the football, but that's not what quarterbacking is about, Scott.
Right.
Because that's not what Stetson Bennett's a leader. He's a much better athlete than he's given credit for. He's got a lot of moxie, a lot of savvy. Everything that JT Daniels is not. JT Daniels can go out here and win a 7-on-7 tournament, but that's not real football, and that's the reason that Stetson Bennett became the QB at Georgia and won a national title and is now trying to do something that hasn't been done since 2012, repeat as a national champion, and he's already a legend in Georgia football.
All right, let's get that break in. When we come back, more Talking Ball presented by Bryant Bank here at SEC Media Days, Day 3 inside the college football game. Today's coverage brought to you by Bryant Bank, the presenting sponsor of today's show. Thank you to Bryant Bank. They are just a local bank that makes you feel welcome, makes you feel like family. It is Bryant Bank here. Day 3 sponsor of SEC Media Days inside the College Football Hall of Fame. Just a short time left here in hour number 1. We do have 30 more minutes of coverage coming up. And when we said goodbye for that last break, we were talking about the fact that JT Daniels, he's not going to get rattled. Stetson Bennett not going to get rattled like JT Daniels.
Stetson Bennett's a legend now.
Yeah, but now Florida is going to bring Anthony Richardson here. And Anthony Richardson, by the way, just so that everybody knows, is distancing himself from the AR-15 nickname.
Due to what's going on in America, we
understand
that.
He put something out on social media saying that he's going to try to distance himself from that. But Ventrell Miller will be here for the Florida Gators as well.
He's been injured, but he's a huge part of that defense when healthy.
Yeah, and then the coach, Drew, that you just don't give any credit to ever, never on this show have you ever given him any credit. That would be Mark Stoops and the Kentucky Wildcats, the last one through the building today.
Yeah, ask Jeff from the Borough that. The earwax builds up or something. He just doesn't, or he just hears what he wants to. I don't understand why he thinks I'm so against Mark Stoops. I actually think he's done a remarkable job. Our good friend Freddie Maggard has come on and really giving us insight into that program. I still think they could finish behind Georgia, second in the East this year. I think Georgia is by far and away the favorite, though, in the East, and we're going to talk some Georgia football in a few minutes with our next guest who will be joining us in the top of the hour. But, Georgia's the defending national champion right now. They are the heavy favorite. They will be, I think, when the vote comes out. I'm certainly going to vote them number 1 in the East.
Right.
I think by far they have the best roster. Well, the one thing I'll give Kirby Smart credit for, too, is – and he does this even more than his mentor, Nick Saban. He plays so many guys, especially on defense. Now, the one thing that he had that's started to affect him now, though, is losing some prominent assistant coaches, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and defensive coordinator Dan Lanning. But he's done a great job of bringing in a guy like Will Muschamp, who played with him at Georgia. It was a tandem back there at safety. Will has extensive history in the SEC as a coordinator and one of the best recruiters in the country. And I'm going to be fascinated to see now the transition from special teams to defense, if there's any drop-off at all.
All right, that's the end of hour 1 here of Talking Ball on 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Day 3 coverage, again, presented by Bryant Bank. 3 locations in Huntsville. Locations in Huntsville. 1 going to be coming soon in Athens. BryantBank.com. Make sure you check them out. They are today's presenting sponsor. Bring your finances to Bryant Bank. They are much more than just a financial institution. They are a community bank that cares about you and treats you like family. BryantBank.com, our Day 3 presenting sponsor of Talking Ball.